It's 10 o'clock here on RTE Radio 1. Welcome to Tonight with Tom McGurk. Well, tonight we're coming live from Ferrybank in Waterford, or should I say Kilkenny. Why are we here? Well, you have heard of some of the great geographical disputes across the world, the 49th parallel that separates North and South Korea. You've heard of the Berlin Wall that separates East from West. You've heard of Alsace-Lorraine between Germany and France, but they all fade into nothing compared with the dispute between Kilkenny and Waterford, but where one begins and the other ends. On the sports desk, Damien, I'm in Flynn's bar in Ferrybank, so you need any tips on horses or dogs, my dear boy, this is the place to come.
I'm telling you, you're certainly asking the wrong man. I'm hoping you'll bring a few back with you.
For horses or dogs?
Either. Preferably a few tips. I half expected to hear you were in the Kingdom tonight, and I heard you'd left the sanctuary.
Oh, that's
studio
boring. That's boring.
News of that to come, Tom. We'll begin for now with soccer, where we're still awaiting a winner from the Brandywell. Derry City and Shells, of course, meeting tonight in the FAI League Cup final. The game finished scoreless after 90 minutes. They should be just underway in extra time there, and of course, penalties a possibility to separate the sides tonight. Derry down to 10 men. Goalkeeper David Ford sent off 6 minutes before the end. He's been replaced in goal by Pat Jennings Jr. The sides, of course, meeting for the first of 2 games this week. They'll meet in the league in Tolka Park on Friday. Derry chasing the first part of a possible domestic treble. Elsewhere, Shay Given looks set to miss Ireland's Euro 2008 qualifiers with Cyprus and the Czech Republic next month. He had surgery this morning to repair a tear in his stomach that was picked up against West Ham yesterday. Newcastle are predicting at least a 6-week layoff. Both the European and US Ryder Cup teams have arrived in Ireland ahead of the opening ceremony of the tournament on Thursday. The first of the practice days will take place at the K Club tomorrow. As mentioned at the outset, the party is in the Kingdom tonight. The new All-Ireland football champions have returned home with the Sam Maguire. Ahead of that, the GAA confirmed details of the minor replay. Kerry and Roscommon will meet again on Saturday in Cusack Park, Ennis at 3 o'clock. Finally, Tom, to news of racing, where the Aidan O'Brien Trained Yates has been ruled out of the Melbourne Cup. Connections are unwilling to subject a horse to a long flight and the quarantine procedure.
Well, you know, Damien, just to let you know how much sports matters, I'm here in Ferrybank, and Waterford City has proposals because it's a gateway city to extend Waterford across the river.
Indeed.
The port at Bellevue, thousands of houses, all sorts of developments, a new outer ring road, a superstructure around the river shore. And what they're concerned about here is hurling.
They're right to. That's it.
Absolutely. Nobody here is going to change a black and amber to a white.
That's
and
it.
blue.
Keep it.
Anyway, thank you very much, Damien. See you tomorrow. Well, welcome indeed to Waterford. We're coming to you live from Flynn's bar in Ferrybank. Gathered around the table, a group of local people represent various political parties, various interests, including a local historian, and a group of musicians from the Emigrant's Tale, which has been performing in Waterford, and indeed local people here who've joined us in Flynn's bar to tell you a story about one of the great disputes. Over the years, Waterford has bit by bit inched further and further into Kilkenny. They're now proposing to take a large lump out of Kilkenny, and it's not gone down very well. Now, first I'm going to ask Jack Burchapple, a local historian, give us a radio picture of what we're talking about. The river is down the centre of the screen. Waterford City's on the south side, Kilkenny's on the north bank.
Well, we're here tonight across the table, and there's Waterford people and there's Kilkenny people. But for all of us, our local town is Waterford.
City.
Our city, our town is Waterford. I do walking tours in Waterford City, and I think both sides will be concerned tonight. At 6:20 tonight, when I was leading 20 tourists around Waterford City on a walking tour at the clock tower, we were stoned by a thug to impress his girlfriend. And I phoned the guards, and they said they'd be there in 2 minutes, and they weren't, and they haven't come, back to me since.
Okay. Well,
that's the reality of the street of Waterford at the moment.
Well,
it grieves me to tell you this, but this is the only outlet I have.
Okay. Well, then let's move on for the moment to what we're talking about. Can you give us a sort of give listeners a mental picture? Waterford, unusually for a large historic city, has a very small north bank.
Yes.
Historically, it was Kilkenny.
The river runs down between Kilkenny and Waterford, and this dispute we're on about tonight in Flynn's probably goes back 1500 years. Because in the 5th or 6th century, the Dacia people, who became the Waterford people, were expelled from the High Kingship up at Tara. They moved down through Leinster, and they wanted to settle on the north bank of the river shore. But the Ostriki, which were the ancestors of the Kilkenny men, drove them west, and they crossed the river at Carrick and settled in Waterford, which they named Acacia. And I think in recent years they're trying to get back across the river to reclaim their ancient title or whatever. There's a tiny proportion of Waterford City, across the river in Kilkenny. It has gone from a sliver to a slice to a
I'm looking
piece.
at the dates, Jack Birchall. 1840, 1890, 1960, 1944, 1980, 1955. I mean, it has Waterford as an expanding city. Now, the crisis arises because as Waterford expands, the decisions want to be made by Waterford Corporation, which is cutting in to the Kilkenny situation. Isn't that the root of the problem?
The root of the problem is that they want to claim parts of Kilkenny for Waterford. And I mean, there are people at Ferrybank with both identities, but it's kind of it's a funny situation here that if it's a greenfield situation, everybody agrees it's Kilkenny.
Right.
But as soon as someone builds a house in it, half the population argue it's now Waterford.
Now, Councillor Mary Roach is a Waterford independent, a local politician. Can you explain, Mary, what exactly the plans are? National Development, Waterford, the Gateway City, wants to expand across the river, needs to expand across the river, has already moved the traditional Waterford port down to Bellevue, which is now County Kilkenny. So, outline the plan.
Well, I suppose traditionally rivers, were natural boundaries between places, but that isn't the case anymore. And what has happened is that Waterford City has already expanded into South Kilkenny, and the reality is that the city is now administered by two authorities, which is Waterford City Council and Kilkenny County Council. That quite simply isn't efficient. You have, somebody in 67 Bishop's Grove getting their rubbish collection through Waterford City Council, and you have somebody in 68 getting their private rubbish collection from Kilkenny County Council. It doesn't make any kind of administrative sense, and quite simply, regardless of what boundaries there are for GAA or for church or for Gardaí or for health boards, it makes much more sense for the people of South Kilkenny to be administered from Waterford City, because that is essentially where they are living.
But isn't this just a row between two sets of bureaucrats, really?
I disagree. I think it actually means a lot more than that. The people of Waterford have done huge investment into South Kilkenny, and in fact there's been very little investment, I would argue, in South Kilkenny by South Kilkenny County Council. There has been in the last 6 months perhaps some small investment coming into the area since this whole argument has erupted, but since I have been aware in politics at all over the last 10 years, it is obvious that Waterford is a kind of operating on one lung, if you like, which is not efficient, it's not healthy.
Well, I'm just quoting from the Waterford City proposal. Waterford City Council has no effective control over the suitable location of land uses, development, functions and services on lands north of the shore. This is leading to uneven development. Considerable population growth in the city, 4.8%. New in-migration trends. In terms of franchise, only the City Council can have the whole city as its sole policy focus. And in terms of former planning and suitable development, Waterford City and its physical environs constitutes a logical single entity. Now, who is opposed to that? Tomas Brannock.
I'd make a number of points with regard to what Mary said. Just the first thing, and I think it's awful important for everybody to understand this. I have great respect for the city of Waterford. I have great respect for the people of Waterford, its elected representatives on the council. I'd say that at the outset. I actually, in many ways, regret that we're here around the table in the way we are at, because it has developed into a very fractious, divisive issue.
You're enjoying yourself.
Right, but I just make that point, okay? The second point I would make with regard to it is, we say the point of view of Kilkenny County Council is that cooperation between the two local authorities, Waterford City Council and Kilkenny County Council, is the way forward. Now, what is very difficult for people in Kilkenny to understand, and if I can show you, Tom, you can actually verify it for me. I have here the Planning, Land Use, Transportation Study. If you look at it, it says Waterford City from 2004 to 2020. Now, that plan was adopted by Waterford City Council in May 2004. Now, if you look at the years, 2004 all the way down to 2020, you'll see that in 2005, the very first year of it, they come along then with this proposal for a boundary extension. Nowhere in that document is a boundary extension mentioned. What is mentioned in it, page 63, page 66 and page 103 of that document, is cooperation between Kilkenny County Council, Waterford County Council and Kilkenny County Council. The responsibility for setting up the committee to implement this plan rests